our first topic, meet me in Saudi Arabia or Paris. There's a question here, Sean, obviously the Ukrainians are not in Saudi Arabia. The Europeans are gathering in Paris to discuss kind of everything that happened this past weekend. So let me turn it over to you. Is Trump kind of winning the war with Europe, even though there's questions about what's happening in Ukraine?
Yeah, there's two separate issues that are happening, but on parallel tracks. So when it comes to Ukraine, this is where I think people are missing where the ball should be. Ultimately, we all want the war in Ukraine to end. We want people to stop dying, property stop being destroyed, money being spent on needless killing. So everyone gets their panties in a wad about the process. Oh, who's involved? At the end of the day, Zelensky said the other day, he told Trump, Putin fears you. He's the only one that can kind of deal. You're the only one who can deal with him. And then everyone gets offended that they go off to start to cut the deal. Should Ukraine be involved at the end of the day? Of course, they have to be. They can't not be part of an ultimate solution. But for the U.S. to take the lead on this, considering the money that we're spending and the stature that we have, who cares? That shouldn't be what the focus is. So I think you're seeing this progress being made initially with Rubio and others over there in Saudi. President will then eventually meet with Putin at some point. Zelensky is going to be involved in the ultimate solution. And then the second piece is that was led by the J.D. Vance speech in Munich on Friday, where everyone got all offended by the language that J.D. used and the assertiveness. Look, the way I look at this is two friends. At some point, if your friend keeps taking advantage of you, you should call it out because they're not much of a friend. And Europe for a long time has taken advantage of us financially, militarily, economically. And for us to finally call them on the carpet and say, you guys, we've been your friend, we've had your back, and we've asked you to make some commitments to your own neighborhood that you failed to do, is not rude. That's how you actually act among friends. So I actually think it's well timed that we called them out for how they've treated the United States and the support that we've given them. So I'm happy with where we're going. I think that we could see some great things, and people need to stay focused on what the ultimate prize is. Number one, ending the war in Ukraine. Number two is making sure that we have a stronger and better relationship with Europe. Them being stronger, them contributing to their national defense makes us better, it makes them better, and it makes the world safer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, as kind of shocking as Vance's comments were, and some of it was probably not the most ideal way to go to another country and just, kind of lecture them the way he did. The irony is their reaction, Europe's reaction, is to huddle and talk about how we have to take ownership of the continent. We have to take ownership of the future, which, as you say, is exactly what Trump has run on, which is exactly probably a little bit of the reset that needs to happen, where it is not the United States, providing and paying for 80% of the security, but they start taking the majority share of their own neighborhood. And so I think it is fascinating. But to your point, it is a little concerning that they are having a peace negotiation without Ukraine in Saudi Arabia. I mean,
but we'll get to that. I mean, we're not putting a final deal on the table.
Well, I know, but you would think, I mean, look, I believe that we are coming to this on behalf of the Ukrainians. You'd want the Ukrainians to be with us. I mean, so hopefully, we'll see here. If this is going to become shuttle diplomacy, where our team goes from Saudi Arabia up to, Ukraine and back, we'll give it some time. But I think certainly it is concerning. To your second point here, I mean, obviously the reaction to Vance's comments have been pretty, striking. And it's not just what the Europeans had to say, but even, how certain parts of our own media have covered it.
Oh yeah, Chuck Todd had a meltdown. But Dan, the thing is, we get lectured by them all the time, and then we get taken advantage of them all the time. And then for some reason, for us to basically call it out is rude. I mean, at some point, this fluffy diplomacy and nicey nice talk goes so far, but this is like the Doge of foreign policy. At some point, the waste has gotten so bad, it's time to call it out.
Well, look, one, the Europeans have done some stuff for us. A lot of Europeans fought in Afghanistan. I mean, it is not true that it's a one-way street.
Right. No. Well, I didn't say they didn't do anything.
Well, I mean, but the second point is, and I did see this over the weekend, it would be the equivalent of if a European head of state or a member country came and gave a joint address to, let's say, the Republican Congress and said, your DEI policies aren't strong enough. And you guys, the reason you guys are in the minority is that, you guys are not progressive. And I mean, people would basically say, get the what out of our country. So, I mean, I hear you that to me, it was almost like MAGA goes to Europe. I mean, it was right.
No, you heard right.
Right. Which is consistent with, Trump's foreign policy. But I think, as is often the case, it's a little bit of the how. And it could be that history will show that the only way to get them to sit up straight is,
but the funny part about this is the EU president goes out and says, we're now going to strive for 3% GDP commitment. I mean, with respect to NATO. And I'm like, that wouldn't happen without Donald Trump. Most of them don't hit 2. And the point is, this isn't them contributing to their own national defense doesn't benefit us. It benefits them. They become stronger. It benefits us in the sense that they're not as reliant as us every time they have a problem. They have to call us. It actually makes them stronger and it makes the world safer. So some tough love sometimes is needed. They love the talk. They love to lecture us. And once in a while, it's important to remind them of their own commitments.